everyone. Welcome to the Zone to Speak podcast. I'm your host, Juliana. Hey everyone. At Zone to Speak, I know how important it is to stay healthy, strong, and ready for every ride, workout, and adventure. That's why I'm sharing discounts on products I personally use and love. Each one designed to support your performance, recovery, and overall well-being. Whether you are a serious athlete or just trying to feel your best. And remember, every time you shop using these codes, you are directly supporting the podcast and helping me bring more great conversations to life. Psych Plus, their smart pump is a game changer. Light, compact, efficient, and perfect for keeping your tires road and gravel ready. It's also ideal for travel as you can skip the CO2 canisters. You can even change your tire pressure on the go when switching between surfaces. Get 10% off the smart pump and 5% everything else. 15% off down the road cycling gear, beautifully designed and performance-ready apparel. 15% off New Zest, clean, plant-based protein and essential nutrients to fuel your recovery and daily energy. 15% off Oleo's wellness shots, adaptogens, nootropics, and functional nutrients to support performance, focus, and recovery. I take Oleo's daily in the lead up to any of my races, and I have the pre-ride and recovery shots ready for the weekend's big training rides. If you're looking for a clean, effective boost, Oleo's is it. 10% off Cold Age. High-quality supplements, including multivitamins, collagen, creatine, and more. I take their women's fermented multivitamin and creatine daily. 10% off Loop ear plugs, ideal for travel, sleep, sensory recovery, or managing noise at races. 10% off Clearly Not Coffee, a caffeine alternative made with mushrooms, cocoa, maca, and rhodiola. I use it every day for smoother energy, sharper focus, and better hormone balance. 10 pounds off Heal, nutritionally complete, high-protein, plant-based meals for when you are on the go and need something quick, satisfying, and healthy. Also great to take bikepacking. 10 pounds off Shokz headphones, the safest way to listen while you train with open-ear technology that keeps you alert and aware on the road or trail. 35% off Frey Skincare. Skincare made for active people. I have used Frey for 10 years, designed to keep sweaty skin clear, fresh, and glowing. You will find all the partner links, discount codes, and instructions in the episode description. So go check them out and enjoy these perks. Now, let's get into the episode. In this episode of Zone to Speak, I am joined by none other than Wayne Smith, or as many in the cycling world know him as Big Tall Wayne. Wayne is not just any mechanic. He is the trusted right-hand man of Peter Stetina, and one of the most respected mechanics and personalities on the gravel scene. From fine-tuning bikes at some of the biggest races in the world to bringing unmatched energy and expertise to every event, Wayne shares what's like to support elite athletes, the bond between rider and mechanic, and some of the wild behind-the-scenes moments from the life on the road. Whether you are a bike nerd, a gravel fan, or just someone who loves hearing from the unsung heroes of the sport, you are going to love this one. Wayne, welcome to Zone to Speak.
Thank you so much. That's such a complimentary introduction.
Well, that's who you are, so compliments to you.
Well, thank you.
So tell me, how did you get first into bikes and what sparked your interest in cycling and working as a mechanic?
So I first got into bikes as just like many people, I would say the vast majority of people, as a way to get around without my parents. Basically, like before I had my driver's license, like a way to get from point A to point B, without my parents. And I quickly realized that I liked it. And then a couple of my friends and I started taking our bikes and going, off road and going mountain biking. And that was kind of the genesis of like my love for cycling as a cyclist. And then as far as becoming a mechanic, I was a quite a large teenager and high schooler, and I had a tendency to break a lot of things on my bike when I discovered you
Oh
could take it
no.
off road. So I started. I asked a local bike shop if I could, work there, and basically started for just taking out the garbage. And slowly they taught me, a couple things in the back shop, changing tires, changing tubes. And by the time I was, graduating from high school, I I was a pretty good mechanic. I was pretty comfortable walking into a shop and applying for a job as a mechanic.
Cool, really cool. I was talking to someone else, and we were talking about how we rode our bikes as kids and teenagers. And we were laughing how obviously as kids we don't have, a bike computer, but wouldn't it be fun to know how many miles, kilometers we put in that time? Because we
Oh
would
my
just ride,
gosh.
ride, ride like nonstop.
Yeah, and you'd ride over to your friend's house, and then they would get their bikes, and you'd go ride, and then ride home. Like it was,
Yeah,
yeah. All you
yeah,
had was time and a bicycle.
yeah. And I also, when I started doing ultras, I did triathlons. So I think most triathletes don't know much about mechanics, at least the ones I know. And we are all terrified of having a flat, which is so funny to me now doing gravel. And I was in between jobs and I really wanted to learn. So when I was this time between jobs, I was working for a friend of mine who is a mechanic. Anytime, like I'll do any job for you, and I learned so much, and I'm so grateful for that time. I think it's super important for any cyclist to know the basics,
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and if you can find somebody that'll let you have some hands-on experience, like that's excellent.
So you have worked with some top athletes. How did you find your way into the world of pro cycling?
So I originally, I would say, found my way into pro cycling in like, I think it was 20, I want to say 2010, 2011. I'm trying to think, but a friend of mine who is a professional mechanic for the Traka team, this guy by the name of Andrew Shepard, good friend, knew I wanted to kind of step it up and get out of shops and get into the pro cycling thing, and he gave me a recommendation and a leg up uh, to go work in Germany with the U23 USA Cycling.
Oh,
So,
cool.
yeah, I spent a summer over in Germany working for USA Cycling as the U23 mechanic, going to World Cups. Ironically, those of you that are into the gravel scene, three of my athletes were Kerry Warner, who's East Coast based, great guy. Another one was Russell Finsterwald, and Keegan Swenson were
Oh,
my
wow.
athletes over in Germany. So it's been a
Wow.
blast to reconnect with those three. There was another guy called Jack, but I haven't seen him in years. No idea where he ended up. But yeah, it's really really neat to see them still at the elite level as well.
Yeah. How cool. And how is life on the road as a mechanic?
It's it's good. I will say you have to, in my opinion, for it to be sustainable and for it to be a job that you like, you have to like the people you work with. And that's one
100%.
thing that, Pete and I think, have as a unique thing going for us is we enjoy each other's company. It's not just a professional working environment when we're together. Like we've driven to Moab together. Which is 14 hours in a car. We've been on many, many,
Road trips will make you or break you.
oh yeah. And
Yeah.
so like when Pete first asked me if I wanted to be his mechanic, I said I would do one race, and I did it very skeptically because I've worked for other establishments, teams, whatever, and not had a great experience. And it's just because the treatment isn't right. I'm not saying you have to have friendship, but professionalism is the main thing. And that wasn't there in the past. So yeah, it can be tough and really brutal and exhausting, or it can be really fun, really rewarding, and totally exhausting.
Yeah, yeah, no, I can see that. And I agree with you. You got to have a good rapport with the people that you work with. You don't need to be best friends for life, but there has to be a level of friendliness and enjoyment because otherwise, you're just on the road and spending so much time with these people. I guess it's more than the 9 to 5
Oh,
type of job.
100%. Yeah. And mutual respect. Like if you're working with somebody that doesn't respect you, it's not going to work out. If I was working with an athlete that I didn't respect, like if the way they carried themselves, didn't agree with me, I would step away. It goes both ways. It's two-way street.
Are there any misunderstandings or myths about the life of a mechanic, race mechanic?
Yes, and I would say that I am still largely living in the misunderstanding. I I know that the position that I have in the cycling industry is very unique, and I am incredibly um, happy to be in the position I'm at. Um, the like if you take a look at your pro tour mechanics, specifically road, that kind of thing. It's a lot of time in warehouses. It's a lot of time doing mundane repeat work. It's doing the same thing to 20 bikes over and over and over again alone in a warehouse. Or a lot of times, like, if it's a rainy day or a rain stage on any race, regardless of whether it's a World Cup, you know, Pro Tour, you know, it's it's going to be a tough day. You're going to get wet, and early on, another pro mechanic told me, the second that your soap freezes solid and you can't use it, you work until that point. Um,
Wow.
so there's the pro tour guys work thanklessly, and also the other misconception is, oh, so you get to ride your bike a lot. Uh, I mean, I do because I make my time for it when I'm home. But when I saw you in Traka, I participated in the 100K for Traka. That was my first ever gravel event. Um,
I was kind of in shock. I'm like, wow, your first event, which I want to talk more about it
yeah,
shortly.
but I don't bring bikes to events unless it's a spare bike, literally to rip parts off, just because there's not enough time to ride a lot of times. So yeah,
Yeah, which brings me to maybe it's not, but I am thinking it could be stressful. Um, is there any stressful mechanical situation you have faced during a race, and how did you handle it?
uh, yeah. There's always, not always, but I don't know, about half the times there's something to stress about. And a good example is anytime you fly with a bike, and I'm sure many of your listeners and people that ride bikes, recreationally or whatever, have flown with a bike. Anytime you hand your bike over to an airline, it is a total question mark as to what condition it's going to be in when it arrives.
If
And
arrives.
yeah, if it arrives. And when Pete and I arrived to Traka, we got there, and the airline was nice enough to have broken his chain stay or his seat stays completely off the bike. Um, so we luckily pivoted and was able to get a frame from Canyon, who was the sponsor there. But there's been other cases where we've arrived at a race and had like who knows what they did, but they put some huge hole through one of Pete's wheels. A lot of the stresses I'd say are airline related. Um,
Okay,
yeah,
makes
I don't,
sense.
I don't think we've had any self-induced like crash related stresses. Um, but
That's
also,
good.
yeah, it's mainly airline, and then the other one is like just equipment. If conditions change or if they aren't what we expected, and Pete wants to change his equipment last minute, that's not a problem. But sometimes we want equipment that we didn't bring, and so we'll scramble and stress about that.
Yeah, I remember I saw some of Pete's posts saying that there was a gorilla party on top of his bike box because he arrived in pieces. That's awful. Yeah. And I can't imagine because obviously I'm not a pro, and all this stress. Like if my bike doesn't get here, yeah, there could be a ways around that you can rent a bike or something like that, but it's not your bike. So imagine that stress on a pro level because it is your job and you need to show results. So yeah, luckily on this situation here, Traka Canyon was the sponsor and you were able to get a bike quickly. So yeah. And when you were prepping a bike for someone like Pete, what details matter most to you?
Um, Literally all of them. For instance, like when I do a pre-race like bike prep for Pete, I typically try to allow minimum of 3 hours. Typically, I shoot for 4, if not more. Um, and the bike gets, initial clean, and then it gets a deep dive into everything, all the way down to checking the hub bearings. Shimano uses cup and cone bearings in most of their stuff still. So I'll even pull the cups and cones off, visually check, make sure there's nothing in there that's going to cause a last minute issue. Fork comes off, headset gets checked, cranks come off, um, check the bottom bracket. It's basically almost a full teardown and a full build. Um, I don't undo the hydraulic hoses, but the goal is to make sure there are zero question marks when he's on the start line. I don't want to think, oh man, I wonder if that rear brake is going to start rubbing again, if that piston sticks. Like, no, like all that is solved. The only issues that I expect are just totally freak unforeseen ones, which does happen. But yeah, bike prep is 3 to 4 hours before each race, um, and full teardown.
Makes sense because then I guess that's why you don't get stressed because obviously you trust your work and then you do cross check everything. So you know it's good to go.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And gravel is so much tougher on equipment. Is there anything different that you think about or approach the setup differently from road cycling, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. In my opinion, gravel is, I'd say it still remains like the hardest that the athletes are on bikes. And like even considering like downhill, enduro. I mean, enduro is up there too, but the reason gravel's so hard on the equipment is you're effectively riding these glorified road bikes on some pretty gnarly terrain in a lot of cases. And I'm not saying that downhill mountain biking isn't gnarly. It is super gnarly, but that equipment is fully designed and tuned and ready for it.
Yeah.
Gravel equipment, we're getting there. The equipment is really good now, but for the first 5-6 decade, it was a road bike with as big a tires as you could put in there and just send it. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, we've had a lot of things rattle loose. I've had brake calipers rattle loose. I've had derailleurs rattle loose. Um, so now I know, you know prep those threads, make sure they're not going to rattle loose. In some super bumpy races, I even use a paint marker to mark the bolts to make sure visually when he
Wow.
comes through the aid station that I know the bolts are still tight where they should be.
Cool. Because I was just going to ask you if you have any tools or tricks of the trade. So, or, go to solutions at races. So I guess that's one of them. That's a great idea.
Yeah. Um,
Anything else you can think of?
for races, I mean, Pete largely runs his equipment the way he rides it. We don't do any typical special moves pre-race. You want to do stuff like before each race, check your sealant, make sure you have the appropriate sealant in there. um, but it's not like we're changing out to a special derailleur or anything like that. It's just making sure everything is dialed. Yeah, the paint marker trick is a nice one for a long race, just because you can visually tell if something's still tight as opposed to throwing a wrench on it. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I'm always checking because I hate tightening things too tight because I'm not strong and then I can't untie things. But then I'm always paranoid
Yeah.
because of the pounding of the gravel. I just finished bike packing race, and my toolkit, for example, was completely destroyed. I didn't even take it out, but just from the pounding being on the bag, the screws came out and the tool came apart.
Oh yeah. Another a little trick I'd recommend for like the regular average racer or rider is if you're traveling with your bike and you get to a location, use the tools that you're going to carry to assemble your bike. Don't don't use a big Allen wrench when you're carrying a little one for your wheels, because there is a chance you'll tighten a bolt to the point where you can't get it off with your little tiny hand tool. So, I'm not saying practice with it, but when you're assembling your equipment pre-race, use the equipment you're going to race with.
That's a very good tip. And I'm glad you said that because that's what I'm doing. And I like to do everything myself because I also don't want to like not being able to undo something. So, yeah, before traveling, I had to actually call my mechanic and almost crying, ask him to come to my house because I couldn't take my bike to him because it was already in pieces, but I couldn't undo one bolt. And I'm like, I'm stuck here. Um, Please come to my house.
Yeah.
Luckily, the shop was close by. So let's talk Traka, your first gravel race. So
Yeah.
exciting. What inspired you to finally line up as a rider? I know we talked a little bit of timing as well. So maybe it's not inspiration, it was just timing, bike, all the stars lining up.
Yeah, yeah, it was mostly circumstantial. It wasn't like I had put this on my calendar and was training for it. It was I basically reached out to Canyon over in Europe and asked if they would bring a bike for me to use while I was there. And the nice thing about Traka is each race distance has a separate day. So, like Pete's 360 race was on Friday.
Friday.
The 200 race is on Saturday, and then the 100 race is on Sunday. And so there was a full day between Pete's race and this Sunday thing, and my flights back home. I could have, regardless of whether I flew out Sunday or flew out Monday, I was going to get home at basically the same time, just due to layovers. So I elected to spend another night in Spain there and ride the bike that Canyon brought for me, which was super duper fun. I've done many hundreds of mountain bike races, bunches of road stuff. This was just the first opportunity I've had to participate in a gravel event.
How cool. And what were you feeling and what went through your mind when you were at the start line?
I had low to no expectations. Like I didn't have goals. I wasn't trying to, you know, get in a certain time. My through and through, all I wanted was to go ride in Spain and enjoy it. The scenery out there is amazing. Um, the main thing that was going through my head was, did I bring enough clothing? Because it turned out to rain most of the day.
Yes.
But I handled the cold temperatures really, really. If it was hot, I would have been in a lot of trouble, I think. But yeah, it turned out to be just a really nice day. Yeah, rainy, wet, whatever. But it made it fun, made it interesting. So start line, no jitters or anything, just because I wasn't trying to prove anything or do anything. I just wanted to go have fun.
Awesome. And I read that there was this guy that broke his derailleur and was walking. And I guess he didn't know it was his lucky day that Big Tall Wayne was right behind and you stopped your race to help this guy. Tell me the story because I heard you tried to fix it, but he didn't have the tools or something like that. And then you guys had to walk to get help.
Yeah, so I was riding along. It was kind of in the last third of the course, if I remember right. And I look up and there's this guy just kind of standing on the side of the road, and I can tell you look at the bike and you see the derailleur and the chain flopped on the ground. And so I pulled over and I you all right? And he's like, yeah, I've just been walking forever. He's like,
Oh, poor guy.
I ripped my derailleur off, and the derailleur's just in pieces. It broke the hanger, broke the derailleur. Um, I was like, well, let's see if we can get it to be rideable. I was like, I'll bet you we can make it into a single speed. I was like, would you like that? And he's like, yeah. He's like, anything to make it so I don't have to walk anymore. So I pulled over, and we, I had some tricks to get a master link off, so that was no problem. And then uh, we needed to shorten the chain, and we didn't have a chain breaker. And so I was like, all right, maybe we can, just kind of smash this thing with some rocks and get the chain to cut at the point we want it. And so we ended up literally breaking the chain, but not the way you want, with a couple rocks on the side of the road. And we were, doing all this in like somebody's glorified little tiny driveway for their country house that's out there. And this woman walked up to us, and she kind of like, you need help? And I actually studied Spanish in college, in school. That's what my degree's in. So I responded to
Cool.
her in Spanish, and she instantly lit up, opened the gate, invited us in, asked us if we needed water, if we needed food. Like,
How
it,
sweet.
just incredible. And she's like, "Oh, hang on a second. My husband rides mountain bikes. Let me see if he's got the tool you need." And sure enough, the guy walks out with a chain breaker, which is the tool we needed. So once we had the right tool, it was like 2 minutes later, we had his bike single speeded. And he didn't at that point have a problem free day either, but he was able to limp/ride his bike back in. But yeah, it was
Cool.
it was fun. I've had so many people, especially when I'm traveling internationally, stop and ask if I need help. And sometimes I do and sometimes I don't, but it's always appreciated. So I try to return the favor.
Absolutely. Always appreciate it. And I always ask as well, especially if someone is alone, you never know.
Oh
But
yeah.
I mean, what a nice guy you are because your time is limited. You stop your race to help, but not only that, then you go to this house and go through all these things. So what a cool story. And what a lucky guy.
Well, and also like people keep, I mean, Traka is a race. For me, it definitely wasn't. And that's like part of my mentality going in. Like I didn't care. Like if it took me 7 hours, 10 hours, I was just out there to have a good, fun day in the Spanish countryside. And I still don't know where I finished, what time, anything like that. It was like my goals were achieved. Enjoy my time in the Spanish countryside.
Absolutely. I raced the 200 a couple of years ago and I wasn't in top shape. And I was like, I'm just going to have a long day out. I don't care. I'm going to have so much fun. And that's what I did. I even stopped at a gas station, had a beer, and then continued riding.
Yeah,
Yeah. And at that point, the 360 was at the same day and they lapped me around. And I'm like, okay, don't care. It's fine. All good.
yeah.
Yeah. So, from racing Traka, was there anything that lit up mechanically that you think about how you could change how you support your athletes, or no, you're just
Um, that is a really good question. I hadn't actually thought about that. I'm kind of going through. Not really. We're pretty dialed at this point. I think if I had this experience in my like first year or 2 years working with Pete and working on the gravel scene, I think there would have been a lot more light bulb moments. But this is creeping up on like almost 6 years now, 5 6 years. Um, I've ridden my fair share of gravel bikes, and had that experience. And Pete is really good about communicating, especially early on, like things that work, things that don't work, how this worked in the aid station. I didn't like this in the aid station. So we're pretty polished. Yeah, I'm trying to. I mean, I learned some stuff about myself, like I need to eat way more food when I'm when I'm pedaling
yeah.
that hard for that long. But yeah, yeah,
Cool.
I
Well, that's
think
great. I can see you guys such a tight team. It's so cool to watch. So, yeah, good. It's a, I guess, validation that you're doing the right thing. There's nothing new.
Yeah,
yet.
I'll take that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you see yourself doing more races when possible now?
Absolutely. It kind of what it did do for me was reinforced the fun of it. I did understand. For Pete, I don't think I learned much on the elite aspect. I think what I did learn was the a lot about the average cyclist, the participant, you know the 9 to 5 worker that goes out there and does one of these gravel rents events. It really showed me the fun of it. It showed me the camaraderie. You know that's what it showed me more than anything on the professional level. So yeah, when possible, I'm absolutely gonna sign up and participate. I'll use the term race very loosely, but participate in these events. There's a local one coming up in about three or 4 weeks. It's just after Unbound, about an hour north um, of where I live, called Lost and Found. And Pete's going to do it, and there's no reason for me not to do it. So I'll probably go up there with Pete and hang out with him on the start line, and then once he goes, I'll grab my bike and go do it myself as well.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
You are a well known personality in the cycling world. What's one story that from your time on the road that still cracks you up?
It's ooh, one story. There's a bunch of little ones. Like I get a thrill out of working an event, sitting in a booth or even just walking around an expo, and people come up and introduce themselves to me and say hi. Like that, I think that's absolutely incredible. Like that
Yeah.
reinforces that, all I'm trying to do is have fun and make bikes work. It's awesome and neat that I get to work on one of the elites bikes, but I'm just happy to be out there and in the industry. Uh, and it seems like no matter where I am in the world, um, like I walked into here's a story. I was traveling with some friends. We were doing an RV trip from Denver to Monument Valley and back. And there's some friends that my wife and I met when we were traveling in Mexico, and they happened to be up. So we rented an RV together, and we're in Fruta. Um, and their little son, we had just gotten him a bike, and I went, well, we need to get him a helmet. So we go into this thrift store, and there's no helmets in there. And I was like, oh, there's a bike shop right next door to the thrift store. And so I walk in the bike shop, and he's like, hey, can I help you? And I was like, yeah, I'm looking for kids helmets. And he looks up and he goes, why are you looking for kids helmets? And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, I know who you are. Pete doesn't ride a kid's helmet. And I was like, oh, well, and we chatted and hung out for a bit. But for me, it's really funny being recognized, I guess. And it doesn't
Yeah.
happen often or all the time, but when it does, it always catches me off guard and puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, I'm sure it's heartwarming. And that story, it's quite funny. Yeah, that he
Yeah.
thought, you only buy things for Pete. There's no one
Yeah.
else. Anyone in the cycling world that has inspired or influenced you?
Ooh, so many, to be honest with you. Kind of the top for me is a guy called Len Forkus, who's actually currently on Mount Everest. He I worked Race Across America twice with him. After the first year, we swore we'd never do it again. And then 5 years later, he called up his crew. And of course, we did it again.
Wow.
So we did two. He was the athlete. He was a solo Race Across America attempt. And I went into it with expectations that he was kind of just a wealthy guy under the guise of a nonprofit wanting to do this event and basically not pay for it. And I couldn't have been more wrong. He runs a nonprofit organization called Hope Cam, putting cameras in classrooms as well as in hospital for youth and children that have cancer. And what it does is it maintains the social connection. And it's shockingly important. But even after the first day I met this guy, he has become my Michael Jordan. Like he is still the top as far as like that I've gotten to work with. And I think part of that is because I had such different expectations.
Yeah.
But you know, Pete is an inspiration for me because he's had a career in the cycling industry on the roadside and has pivoted and turned it into a career on the gravel side. And his reputation when he came over to the gravel side was clear and present just on how he is and how he carries himself. And um, I think that's it's inspirational for me, and I think a lot of people could learn from how he carries himself. And I mean, he he didn't go to college or anything, but the dude is smart and his business savvy. I've learned a lot from.
Yeah, he's very authentic, true to himself, and absolutely, he's super smart. I had him on the podcast and really enjoyed our conversation. And I don't think smarts and intellect has anything to do with going to college,
Oh
getting
yeah.
academics or anything. Um, but yeah, I can see that. So I just have some rapid fire questions just for
Yeah.
fun. Okay. Tubeless or tubes?
Oh, tubeless on everything, even your commuter bike. Everything
Yeah,
should be tubeless.
agree. SRAM or Shimano?
SRAM or Shimano? I'm gonna say Shimano. Uh, I do think they're both very, very good components. I just, it's smooth. There's a perfection to it that I love. So I'm Shimano.
Okay. I just tried for the first time SRAM, and I don't know. I'm 50-50. I don't know. But okay, you said Shimano and you're the guy, so most annoying bike noise.
Ooh. I would say an unlubed chain, like a creak 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 creak. Um, and it's the reason it's annoying is because the solution is so simple. Um,
That's true.
everybody can have an annoying bottom bracket or a headset that creaks or something like that, and those can be a litany of issues. But a squeaky chain that needs lube, all you got to do is lube it, and you're solved.
Yeah, that's true. Um, I am traumatized by squeaking brakes
Ah,
because I had these squeaky brakes and I was in Morzine, which has so many coals, and with coals comes big descents, and everybody could hear me coming down before they could see me. It was awful. And I just had to change everything, the brake pads, the discs, everything had to go because I changed the pads and continued to squeak. I'm traumatized with the noise. I cannot hear it.
fair enough.
You can't say Pete on the next question.
Okay,
Favorite writer to rent for?
Pete Stetina. No.
Okay, you can say Pete. Fine.
uh, favorite writer to rent for. I'm gonna make a generalization. I and this is the desperate the desperate writer. One of my favorite things to do is to work an event like in an aid station or like expo, and basically you're in the position of obligatory hero. People come to you with issues, and most times you can solve them. And so I really really do love working on just the average everyday person's bike that they're to participate. At Pay Dirt last weekend, I had a total scream sitting in the the aid station, just solving little issues for people. It's just really fun. People are really appreciative. So yeah, I would say and I'm talking to your listeners. You guys are my favorite athletes to wrench for.
That's a great answer. And I'm sure it can be a high, from helping all these people because you do become a hero. I mean, I love my mechanic.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I gotta make that guy happy, because he fixed my bike, which is my favorite thing. How about last one? Any event that you would like to work at or participate that you haven't yet been?
Ooh, I would, and this one might. mark my words, this will come back and bite me in the butt if I actually get to do it. I've always wanted to work the Cape Epic. And the reason I say that, it's going to come back to bite me in the butt is because the mechanics I know of that have gone to that say that it is insane, difficult, challenging work. I want to see it. I want to experience it. There's, I'd love to do an event in Chile at some point. I've spent some time down there and traveled. So
Okay.
there's a couple different events down there, and I think it'd be really fun to go to one of those. But yeah, the other ones, if we spoke 3 years ago, I would have had a laundry list, but those boxes have largely been ticked.
Amazing.
It's been really, really super fun to travel and see the world like this.
Wayne, I'm so pleased to meet you. I'm so happy we run into each other at Traka. I'm so happy you're part of
Yeah,
Zone 2. And I hope I see you again. I mean, I really hope one day I can go to the US and be part of Pay Dirt as well.
it's super fun. It's a very different race, but it's really, really fun. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it was totally shocked to meet you at Traka. That was really, really fun.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, he was. He was. I saw this big tall guy coming. I was like, oh my God, it's Wayne. Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me on.
And that's all for today's episode. I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider following, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends.